Chapter 1, Vivi, the family arranged a marriage for you years ago. Now that you're almost fully recovered, are you willing to return to the capital to get married? If you're still unwilling, I'll talk to your father again and we can cancel the engagement. In the dimly lit room, Vivienne Windsor could only hear the sound of silence. Just when the person on the other end of the line thought they wouldn't be able to persuade her this time either, she suddenly spoke, "I'm willing to go back and get married." Eleanor Windsor on the other end of the phone froze, seemingly caught off guard. You agreed?" Vivienne's tone was calm. "I agree, but I still need some time to handle matters here in Newbridge. I'll be back within half a month. Mom, you and Dad can start preparing for the wedding." After saying a few more things, she hung up. The moment the call ended, the blaring music from downstairs drifted up, and faintly, she could hear someone singing, "Happy Birthday." It was a birthday party Lucas, Sterling, and Kian Quinn were throwing for Hannah Vance. Suddenly, footsteps approached from outside the door. Hannah, holding a slice of Black Forest cake, walked in with a smile. Her doe-like eyes blinked a few times, her delicate face adorned with exquisite makeup, though a few smudges of cream looked somewhat out of place. "Vivi, why don't you come down and join us?" Vivienne had already seen through the facade beneath that face. Her tone was icy. "I still have work to do. I won't be joining you. Have fun." Almost instantly, Hannah's eyes welled up with tears. "Vivi, is it because you don't like me that you're brushing me off like this?" Vivienne frowned instinctively. She hadn't done a thing, yet Hannah was acting as if she'd been terribly bullied. What was that all about? She sneered inwardly, having no patience for Hannah's crocodile tears. "Save your performance for Lucas and Kian. It doesn't work on me." As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to close the door. "Vivi, don't!" Hannah suddenly stuck her hand out, blocking the doorframe. This caused her entire hand to be brutally slammed when the door closed. The back of her fair hand instantly turned a bruised purple. Hiss! Lucas and Kian happened to be coming upstairs and witnessed this exact scene. Both men rushed forward almost simultaneously, pulling Hannah into their arms, cradling her hand tenderly as they examined it. Seeing the injury on Hannah's hand, Kian's eyes reddened with distress. He had always been a bit impulsive, and he lashed out at Vivienne directly. "It's one thing if you don't like Hannah, but why would you do something so despicable? Vivienne Windsor, when did you become like this?" Lucas Sterling was usually cool-headed, but as he looked at Vivienne now, his deep eyes also held disappointment. "Vivi, it's Hannah's birthday today. You shouldn't have gone this far." But when he looked down at Hannah, his tone changed instantly. "Hannah, does it still hurt? I'll take you to get some ointment." Seeing Lucas lead Hannah away, Kian also followed, hastily comforting her. "Hannah, don't be sad. I'll give you that new sports car I got. After the party, I'll take you for a drive." "A good drive will cheer you up," doted on by the two men. Hannah finally stopped her tears, though her voice was still a little choked. "Thank you, Lucas." After thanking Lucas, she looked at Kian, her eyes tearful as she pleaded, "Kian, please don't go racing. It's very dangerous, I'll worry." Seeing Hannah smile through her tears, Kian eagerly agreed. All right, anything for you, my dear, as long as you're happy, whatever you say goes." Watching their retreating figures descend the stairs, Vivienne stood at the door, feeling for a moment as if she were in a daze. She remembered a long time ago, she used to be the one standing between Lucas and Kian. She had been frail and sickly since childhood, suffering from asthma. The capital, unfortunately, was damp and rainy, unsuitable for her recovery. So, at the age of 5, her parents sent her from the capital to the perpetually spring-like city of Newbridge, to live with her aunt, a doctor, to recuperate. It was during this time that Vivienne met Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn, who lived next door to her aunt. The three of them grew up together, childhood sweethearts. From the first moment they saw her, both boys were smitten, sticking to her side every day, becoming her devoted knights. When they were young, they would escort her to and from school, buy her breakfast and milk, tear up all the love letters she received, and forbid any other boy from coming near her. As they grew older, one inherited the family business and became a CEO, while the other became an internationally renowned racer. Though their work kept them busy, they bought the houses on either side of Vivienne's, knocked down the walls to connect them, and lived with her, always coming home to cook for her. Even when Vivienne had mostly recovered and her family urged her to return to the capital, they had both pleaded with her, tears in their eyes, begging her not to leave, threatening to drop everything and follow her if she did. They always said, wherever Vivi was, they would be. It was because of them that Vivienne had delayed her return to the capital long after her conditions stabilized. But everything changed after Hannah appeared. Hannah was an intern Vivienne supervised. On her first day at the company, she shyly refused to go downstairs for lunch with everyone. This continued daily until Vivienne found her nibbling on a plain bun and pickles in a corner. Upon inquiry, Vivienne learned that Hannah had tested her way into the big city from a poor, mountainous region and was saving every penny she could. Vivienne, a young lady from the affluent Windsor family, had grown up in comfort. Hearing such a story for the first time, her kind heart went out to Hannah, and she began looking after her in various ways. Occasionally, when dining with Lucas and Kian, she would bring Hannah along. And that was how Hannah met Lucas and Kian. Lucas, with his cool demeanor, had never attended such noisy parties before, but now he made an exception for Hannah. Kian, who considered racing his life, couldn't be dissuaded by anyone, yet now, a single, casual word from Hannah could make him give it up. Such incidents had occurred countless times this past month. Previously, their affection for Vivienne had never been concealed. More than once, they had engaged in fierce rivalry, pressuring Vivienne to choose between them. Vivienne had genuinely felt something for them and had considered choosing one to be with. But now, accepting the family's arranged marriage didn't seem so bad. Vivienne pursed her lips and set a departure countdown on her phone. From now on, she wouldn't disturb the three of them. Chapter 2, Vivienne Windsor closed the door and put on her earplugs, not wanting to hear the revelry outside. Since she had decided to go back and get married, she had to resign from her job here. However, she still wanted to complete her current tasks to avoid causing trouble for others. She sat by the French window, working alone on the remaining projects. Outside, the sun set, and the sky gradually darkened. Vivienne removed her earplugs, stood up, and stretched. After working for so long, she had finally finished everything. It was completely quiet downstairs now. She instinctively opened her phone to relax. Just then, a message from Hannah Vance popped up. Vivienne subconsciously tapped it open. "Why didn't you like my social media post?" A minute after sending that, Hannah sent another. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Vivi. I sent that to the wrong person. Please don't be angry, okay?" Vivienne clicked on Hannah's profile, curious to see what she had posted. A 9-photo grid met her eyes. The photos were all of gifts from Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn. A magnificent pink princess gown was spread out, resembling a fluffy pink cloud. To match the dress, Lucas had also gifted a pair of custom-made crystal diamond shoes, the sparkling diamonds reflecting a beautiful, luxurious light. And the red sports car was clearly from Kian. In the center photo, Hannah stood between Lucas and Kian, her arms linked with each man, smiling sweetly. The caption read, "Yay, I got to be a princess today too." Vivienne knew Hannah posted these things deliberately, just to provoke her and make her angry. If it were the old Vivienne, she indeed wouldn't have been able to stand this two-faced act. Nor could she have tolerated Lucas and Kian giving things that were once exclusively hers to Hannah, whom they had known for less than a month. However, now that she was leaving, she naturally didn't care about these things. She nonchalantly tapped the screen with her fingertip, and a red heart icon lit up. From now on, she, Lucas, and Kian were just ordinary friends. This difficult choice was now Hannah's to make. The next day, Vivienne went to the company and submitted her resignation. After returning home, she gathered all the photos of the three of them together. They had known each other for over 20 years, and the number of photos they had taken together was countless, filling more than a dozen thick albums. Flipping through them, there were pictures of Lucas and Kian playing house with her as children, photos of the three of them winning awards together in middle school, pictures from their university trips. Vivienne looked through them one by one, the memories so vivid they seemed to have happened just yesterday. But now, none of it mattered. She lit them one by one and tossed them into the trash can, creating a small bonfire. The flames licked at the images, devouring them until only ashes remained. Lucas and Kian returned one after the other, just in time to see this scene. Realizing what she was doing, Lucas strode over, his voice trembling slightly. "What are you doing?" Vivienne glanced at him, her tone calm. "Nothing. These photos were getting moldy, so I decided to burn them." Kian instinctively reached for the remaining photos in Vivienne's hand, but she deliberately let her hand tremble, dropping the rest of the photos into the fire. The flames spread quickly, giving them no chance to salvage anything. Kian tried to snatch some unburnt photos, but the intense heat forced him to retract his hand. "Even if they were moldy, you didn't have to burn them, these are memories," he exclaimed, his voice filled with pain, his eyes red with distress. Lucas also stared at the fire with a pained expression, helpless. Hearing this, Vivienne found it somewhat amusing. She, a living person, was standing right here, yet they could hurt her repeatedly for Hannah's sake. Now, over a mere pile of photos, they were acting so heartbroken. She suddenly felt curious. What kind of reaction would these two have if they found out she had decided to go back and get married? Chapter 3. Looking at the two anxious men before her, she said calmly, "They're just photos. We can always take more. Since they're burned so thoroughly, we'll just have to take new ones in the future. It's been a while since we last went on a trip anyway," Lucas Sterling suggested, trying to find a silver lining. Kian Quinn quickly added, "And when we go this time, we can take Hannah. She's always said she's never been on a real vacation." Hearing Kian's words, Vivienne Windsor let out another self-deprecating laugh. Lucas and Kian, assuming she agreed with the suggestion, breathed a sigh of relief. As they were about to walk further in, they noticed several boxes in the living room that hadn't been there when they left that morning. "What's this now?" they asked in unison. Vivienne glanced at them. "Oh, I quit my job. I'm planning to find a new one." Didn't she like her previous job? The same question surfaced in both men's minds. Vivienne was acting very strangely today, and an inexplicable sense of unease crept into Lucas and Kian's hearts. Kian moved his lips, wanting to ask more, but a sudden ringing phone broke the silence. Lucas answered. Hannah Vance's anxious and helpless voice came from the other end. "Lucas, the power suddenly went out at my place. I'm so scared. What should I do?" Kian, who was beside him, heard this and his expression changed. He quickly spoke before Lucas could. "Hannah, don't be afraid, I'll be right over." Lucas's brow furrowed deeply, his usually calm face showing obvious tension. Concern for Hannah took precedence, and Lucas and Kian grabbed their car keys and left together. Vivienne, however, remained calm throughout. After they left, she called her aunt. Growing up, she had lived with her Aunt Melody, who treated her very well, like her own daughter. Now that she was leaving, she naturally had to say a proper goodbye. Hearing that Vivienne was going back to get married, Aunt Melody Windsor's voice was full of reluctance, but even more surprise. "Vivi, do Lucas and Kian know about you going back to get married?" Vivienne paused for a moment. "They don't know, Aunt Mel. Please help me keep it a secret. I don't want any more complications." A moment of silence followed on the other end of the line. Aunt Melody sighed deeply. "Ah, well, you've always been their treasure. Anyone could see those two boys liked you. You three were always together. I really thought you'd end up marrying one of them." "What a pity." Vivienne smiled faintly and said calmly, "It's no pity. We weren't right for each other." Hearing this, her aunt didn't press further, merely saying, "Vivi, I knew you'd go home eventually. I just didn't expect it to be so soon. I've watched you grow up. Come see me before you leave. If you go back to the capital, who knows when we'll see each other again?" Vivienne smiled, a hint of playful affection in her tone. "I will, Aunt Mel. I have some gifts for you too. I'll miss you terribly." After hearing this, her aunt chatted for a few more minutes before hanging up. No sooner had she hung up than another call came in. It was Director Miles from Vivienne's company. "Vivi, your previous design won an award for the company. The trophy just arrived, but you'd already resigned and didn't get it. I had your intern deliver it to your home." Just as he finished speaking, the doorbell rang. Vivienne hung up and opened the door to see Hannah standing outside, holding the trophy. Chapter 4. She held the trophy, her face showing no joy for Vivienne, nor any intention of handing it over. Instead, she bit her lip and said pitifully, "Vivi, Director Miles asked me to bring you the trophy. This award is very prestigious. You're amazing. I wanted to ask you, rather brazenly, if I could borrow this trophy for a few days. I've never won one like it." Borrow it for a few days? Vivienne had never heard such an absurd request. She frowned, a smile that didn't reach her eyes on her face. "Since you know it's brazen, then don't make such a request. If you like it so much, go compete for one yourself." With that, she reached out to take the trophy from Hannah's arms. Unexpectedly, Vivienne's attitude was so cold. Hannah's face flushed then paled, looking as if she'd been terribly bullied. "Vivi, how can you talk like that? I don't want to keep it, I just want to put it in my home to motivate myself. Can I even do that?" Seeing Vivienne reach for it, Hannah clutched the trophy even tighter, refusing to let go. In the struggle, the crystal trophy crashed to the floor with a thud, shattering into pieces. Lucas, Sterling, and Kian Quinn walked in just then, saw the scene, and rushed forward, pulling Hannah into their embrace. The two men surrounded Hannah, their expressions full of alarm, carefully checking her for injuries. Lucas gently lifted Hannah's skirt hem and saw that her calf was bleeding from a glass shard. His eyes narrowed, his heart aching for her. "I'll take you to the hospital." Ignoring Hannah's struggles, he swept her into his arms bridal style and left. Looking at the shattered glass on the floor, Kian's face darkened. He demanded, "Vivienne Windsor, you already have everything, why do you still have to fight with Hannah over things?" Fight. Hearing that word, Vivienne almost laughed out of anger. "This is my trophy, the result of 3 months of hard work, my honor, and she's clinging to it with that pitiful act, and you say I'm fighting with her for it." Her body trembled with anger. Pointing at the fragments on the floor, her voice was so cold it could almost freeze the air. "Now she's even broken the trophy. I want Hannah to apologize to me." She thought her few words were enough to clarify who was right and who was wrong. Who would have thought Kian would get even angrier? His voice rose several decibels. "I thought it was something important, but it's just a trophy. You can have as many as you want. How can it compare to Hannah? You hurt her. I don't think she should apologize to you. You should apologize to her." With that, Kian didn't even bother to see Vivienne's reaction and hurried off to take care of Hannah. Staring at the mess of fragments on the floor, Vivienne stood blankly for a long moment, Kian's words echoing in her mind. He actually wanted her to apologize to Hannah, for the victim to apologize to the perpetrator. "Kian Quinn, you're really something." A sharp pain shot through her heart. Belatedly, a stinging sensation came from her leg. Only then did she realize her leg had also sustained a long gash, the flesh torn and bleeding, much worse than Hannah's injury. Vivienne gritted her teeth, enduring the pain, cleaned up the fragments on the floor, and then went back to treat her own wound. In the evening, Vivienne received a message from Eleanor Windsor. Her mother had sent over a dozen wedding dress styles for her to choose from. Vivienne looked through them one by one before calling her mother. After a few sentences, Eleanor noticed the exhaustion in Vivienne's voice and couldn't help asking what had happened. Thinking of the injustices she had suffered today, Vivienne's eyes reddened slightly, but she said nothing, merely changing the subject. "Mom, I should be able to wrap things up here in about a week. How are the wedding preparations coming along?" Just then, Lucas and Kian came home. Hearing Vivienne's last 2 words, they asked in unison, "Wedding. What wedding?" Chapter 5. The phone in Vivienne Windsor's hand had been hung up at some point. She composed herself before speaking. "My best friend is getting married. Why are you going to attend?" Now that Lucas, Sterling, and Kian Quinn were growing increasingly cold towards her, once she returned to the capital, they wouldn't see each other again. They wouldn't even be considered friends. So there was no need to tell them the truth about her returning to the capital to get married. Hearing her words, Lucas and Kian instinctively exchanged a glance, both feeling it was a bit strange. But neither of them overthought it, simply saying casually, "No, you go ahead. I'm busy with the company." With that, seemingly still angry that she had caused Hannah Vance's injury today, Lucas picked up some documents with a cold expression and went to the study. Kian also said with a grim face, "Hannah got scraped today because of you. You'd better go apologize to her. Otherwise, I have no interest in attending any wedding with you." After speaking, he also strode back to his room. Vivienne gave a self-deprecating smile, but said nothing. The next morning, Vivienne got up to make breakfast. As she came out, she found the entire living room filled with over a dozen vases overflowing with fresh flowers, their fragrance gently wafting through the air. Pollen, carried by the breeze, blew in overwhelmingly. Vivienne's face instantly turned deathly pale, her breathing becoming increasingly rapid. She had asthma and was allergic to pollen. She gasped for breath, her breathing heavy, her chest heaving, and her vision began to blur. However, the air entering her lungs grew less and less, making breathing extremely difficult. Medicine? Following the memory in her mind, Vivienne staggered towards the medicine cabinet, trying to get her asthma medication. However, her hands flailed, fumbling, gradually losing strength. Accidentally, she knocked over several flower vases on a nearby cabinet. Crash, the vases fell to the floor, shattering into pieces. The flowers and water spilled out, creating a mess. Hearing the clear sound of breaking vases, Lucas and Kian rushed over. Seeing the chaotic scene on the floor, the two men had no time to notice Vivienne's distress and instead flew into a rage. "What are you doing?" At that moment, Vivienne had just managed to grab her medicine and could barely spare the attention to answer them. Kian, however, rushed over with a tense expression, pushed her aside, and then knelt down anxiously to pick up the flowers still intact on the floor. Vivienne, already weak, was pushed so hard that her knee slammed into the corner of the cabinet, instantly scraping off a layer of skin, leaving it red and swollen. She clutched the medicine bottle, her hands trembling uncontrollably, her breathing becoming more and more rapid. Finally, she opened the cap and found the inhaler. Like someone clutching at straws, she administered the medication to herself while limping to a nearby corner. As the medicine entered her airways, the dry, sore windpipe finally felt some relief. She had fought desperately to save her life, yet Lucas and Kian were still busy cleaning up the flowers and broken vase fragments. Chapter 6, Vivienne Windsor finally managed to recover. She leaned against the wall, clutching her medication tightly, her hand covering her face to prevent inhaling more pollen. Before she could even rest for a moment, Lucas Sterling's accusatory voice reached her ears. "Are you targeting Hannah Vance that much? She just sent us these flowers and you had to smash them." Kian Quinn's voice, filled with anger, followed closely. "Vivienne Windsor, I've realized you're becoming more and more unreasonable lately. How could you change so much?" Hearing this, Vivienne took a deep breath. Her whole body trembled with anger and indignation. Countless furious words wanted to pour out, but in the end, they merely turned into a choked sob, her eyes red. "I've changed. Have I changed, or have you? I have asthma and I'm allergic to pollen. Don't you know that?" Her weak voice lacked any force, but every word struck Lucas and Kian like a clap of thunder. They used to be the most anxious about Vivienne. Every time Vivienne had an asthma attack, they were the most frantic, even skipping class by climbing over the wall to rush back, staying by her bedside with red eyes, bringing her tea and water, and no one could pull them away. But now they had forgotten something so important. Perhaps realizing their mistake, Lucas's face turned a mixture of pale and flushed. After a moment, a hint of apology appeared on his cool face. "Sorry." Kian's sharp brows furrowed slightly. Remembering Vivienne's past attacks, how they had been with her through so many, he naturally knew how much she suffered. He couldn't help but take a step forward. Are you okay now?" "I'm sorry. Hannah picked these wildflowers herself. She put a lot of heart into them. That's why I was so anxious." Vivienne remained silent. Seeing she had used her medication and her complexion was gradually returning to normal, Lucas and Kian quickly took the flowers out of the house. For the next few days, Lucas and Kian didn't come home. The lights in their rooms remained off. Vivienne didn't care about them. She was busy packing her luggage. After she had mostly finished packing, she began to look around the house. She had bought this place. Later, Lucas and Kian, wanting to be close to her, bought the houses on either side, knocked down the walls, and combined them to form the current house. So, only a third of this house actually belonged to her. Selling it would be a bit troublesome. One day, Lucas and Kian finally returned, only to run into Agent Miller, who had come to discuss viewings with Vivienne. Seeing a strange man in the house, Lucas's face instantly turned cold. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" Faced with two pairs of intensely intimidating eyes, Agent Miller became extremely nervous, but he quickly explained. "Good day, sirs. I'm a real estate agent. The owner of this house said she wants to sell it." Selling the house? Lucas and Kian exchanged a look, both seeing shock in each other's eyes. Their faces turned cold, and just as they were about to drive the agent away, Vivienne came downstairs. "I'm the one selling the house. I was just about to discuss this with you." Hearing this, Lucas and Kian's hearts tightened, and they spoke in unison. "Why sell it? Haven't we been living here just fine?" Kian remembered the events of a few days ago and seemed to understand the reason. He immediately asked bluntly, "Are you still angry about what happened the other day?" He was clearly flustered and offered a rare apology. "We didn't intentionally forget about your pollen allergy." "Do you really have to be so drastic?" Vivienne calmly shook her head. "It has nothing to do with last time. It has to do with you. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore." Though she thought this, she didn't say it out loud, merely stating, "You know I've quit my job. I'll be changing jobs, so it's not suitable for me to live here anymore. Besides, we've lived together for so many years, there's no need to stick together all the time." Lucas's face was grim. He still refused to yield. "If it's about work, Kian and I can drive you. You don't need to worry. Besides, you said we've lived together for so many years, we're all used to it. Why separate?" "Yeah, with Lucas and me around, worst case, we can arrange a driver for you." "I don't agree to separating." Kian also voiced his disapproval. Seeing that this wasn't enough to convince them, Vivienne pressed her temples, not understanding why they were so insistent. She played her trump card. "In that case, let's sell this one and buy a bigger house. Then we can even have Hannah move in with us." Hearing Hannah's name, both men's eyes lit up and they hesitated. Finally, Kian couldn't resist the proposal and spoke first. "If that's the case, it's not impossible." Only Lucas, with his deeper thoughts, looked at her with complex emotions in his eyes. "You're willing to have Hannah move in." For some reason, he felt that things weren't as simple as he imagined. But before he could think further, Vivienne chuckled lightly. "Of course, why wouldn't I be? We're all friends." She made a decisive decision. "That's settled then. Sell this house and buy a new one." With these words, Lucas and Kian fell silent, no longer objecting. Chapter 7, with the house finally sorted, Vivienne Windsor couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. A great weight lifted from her shoulders in an instant. When signing the contract, Vivienne noticed that the day for finalizing the property transfer was the exact day she was leaving. This was perfect. It saved her the trouble of explaining things to Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn. The moment she signed her name, she felt a sense of lightness. Soon, everything would be over. Now, only one last thing remained. She went to a department store, carefully selected a massage device and a pair of jade bracelets, and went to her aunt's house. As soon as she entered, Aunt Melody Windsor immediately enveloped Vivienne in a hug. "Vivi, I'm really going to miss you. You've been in Newbridge for so many years, I've come to see you as my own daughter. I'm really not used to you leaving." Aunt Melody wiped her tears, tightly gripping Vivienne's hand, unwilling to let go. Vivienne couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. She forced a smile to comfort her aunt. "Aunt Mel, I'll miss you too. But we're family, and planes and high-speed trains are convenient. We can see each other again during the holidays." Aunt Melody knew this was true and gradually composed herself, seating Vivienne on the sofa. "Sit tight, dear. Knowing you were leaving, I specially took a few days off. You have to stay at my place for a few days. I'll cook all your favorite dishes." She gave Vivienne no chance to refuse, quickly heading to the kitchen. She prepared several of Vivienne's favorite dishes and brought them out with a smile. Watching her aunt bustle about, Vivienne couldn't help but smile. She couldn't refuse her aunt and agreed to stay for a few days, just to spend some time with her. It wasn't until it was almost time for her to leave, when she could delay no longer, that Vivienne reluctantly said goodbye to her aunt. "Aunt Mel, I really have to go. I'm going back to the capital in 3 days to get married." Aunt Melody fought back tears and her reluctance, nodding repeatedly and pressing a red envelope of gift money into Vivienne's hand. "I have 3 surgeries that day, Aunt Mel. Lives are at stake, so I can't make it. This is a token from me. Vivi, you must be happy." Vivienne's eyes reddened as she respectfully accepted the gift money. "I will, Aunt Mel. Grandpa chose him for me. You should be at ease." At that moment, the elevator doors opened, and Lucas and Kian emerged, one on each side, with Hannah Vance between them. The first thing they saw was Vivienne, eyes red, bidding farewell to Aunt Melody. Both men's hearts inexplicably sank, and they blurted out, "Vivi, Aunt Mel, what are you crying about?" Seeing them, Vivienne wiped her tears and said calmly, "It's nothing. I haven't seen Aunt Mel in a long time, and now that I'm leaving, I'm just reluctant." Hearing this, Lucas and Kian finally breathed a sigh of relief. Their worried hearts instantly settled. "Anyway, we're all in Newbridge, so close. You can come visit whenever you want." Aunt Melody saw that the two were still in the dark and worried about how they would react when they eventually found out. She looked like she was about to say something, but Vivienne quickly changed the subject, turning her gaze to Hannah. "What are you all doing here?" Lucas and Kian then snapped back to reality, a hint of panic in their expressions as they quickly explained. "Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. Hannah was all alone, so we brought her back to celebrate with us." "Yes, don't misunderstand. We called you too, but you didn't answer." They were so flustered because, in previous Mid-Autumn festivals, they had both vied to take her home with them. Because on such a festival representing family reunion, the girl they brought home signified that she was the one they had chosen as their future wife. Vivienne always felt helpless and could only go to the Sterling family first, then to the Quinn family. However, this Mid-Autumn festival, they had brought Hannah back. The meaning behind this was self-evident. Vivienne didn't expose them, merely saying faintly, "I see. That's nice. You all enjoy yourselves. I'm going back to pack my things." With that, she started to walk out, intending to take a car and leave. Just then, Lucas and Kian both called out to her. Vivi, Chapter 8." Vivienne Windsor turned around. Seeing she wasn't angry, the two men breathed a sigh of relief. Lucas Sterling took a few steps forward and grasped her hand. "You don't need to pack your luggage. It's too much and too tiring. I'll have my family driver come over, and we'll move to the new house together." Kian Quinn nodded in agreement. In that moment, Vivienne felt as if she could see a glimpse of the past in these two men, a time when their eyes held only her. She remembered when they were young, she loved to talk, and they loved to laugh. But now, those youthful vows had become empty words. Vivienne's gaze swept towards Hannah Vance, and she shook her head. "No need, there are many things I need to sort out myself." With that, ignoring the expressions on their faces, she turned and left. After returning home, she spent some time packing, washed up, and had just lain down when she suddenly received a call from Hannah. Hannah's delicate voice came slowly through the receiver, her tone filled with unconcealed triumph. "Vivi, tonight I went to both the Sterling and Quinn homes. Lucas and Kian's parents were very nice to me. Their parents even found their family heirlooms and said they wanted to give them to me." "Do you think they mean?" Vivienne calmly interrupted her gloating. "I'm not interested in your affairs. You don't need to tell me these things. It has nothing to do with me." As soon as she finished speaking, she hung up the phone. The day before she left, Vivienne went out. She had specifically arranged to have dinner with her best friend, Chloe Joyner. She didn't have many friends in Newbridge. Growing up, Lucas and Kian had strictly limited her social circle, not only forbidding her from having boyfriends or receiving love letters from boys, but even interfering with her female friendships. Back then, they would say pitifully, "Vivi, isn't having us enough? You're so wonderful, I'm afraid even girls will like you." Their possessiveness over her was terrifying. They wanted her eyes to see only them. But now, it was they who had personally pushed her away. In a newly opened Western restaurant, Chloe was already seated, waiting. Upon seeing Vivienne, Chloe gave her a big hug. The thought of her leaving brought a fresh wave of reluctance. "Vivi, I can't believe you're going back to the capital to get married. I'm going to miss you so much. I really thought you'd marry either Lucas or Kian and stay in Newbridge. Then we could still hang out often." Vivienne smiled faintly at her words. "They have other choices, and so do I." Hearing this, Chloe felt a bit deflated. She thought of Hannah, and her expression instantly turned sour. She said indignantly, "You were so good to that Hannah before, but she—" Vivienne smiled and interrupted, "Let's not talk about such insignificant people. After I get married, I won't see her anymore. Whatever drama she stirs up will have nothing to do with me." Just as she finished speaking, Hannah walked into the restaurant. Since Vivienne and Chloe's table was near the entrance, Hannah overheard part of the conversation but didn't get the full picture. She immediately walked over, curious. "Vivi, who's getting married? Can I come?" I've never been to a wedding before. Vivienne rarely encountered someone with such a lack of boundaries. But perhaps she was used to Hannah's antics, and since she was leaving soon, she didn't get angry, remaining calm. On the other hand, Chloe beside her was furious. She slammed her knife and fork onto the table and glared at Hannah. "My wedding you're not qualified to attend. Are you satisfied with that answer? Do you have any sense of boundaries at all? Are we that close to you that you have to be curious about everything? Would you stick a spoon into a passing swill truck just to see if it's salty?" Chloe's voice was rather loud, and her words were harsh. Hannah's body flinched violently, as if frightened, and tears instantly rolled down her cheeks. She sobbed pitifully, immediately looking towards Lucas and Kian, who had just entered the restaurant behind her. Her large, expressive eyes filled with a plea for help. Lucas, unaware of the preceding events, walked in to see Hannah looking so utterly pitiful. He instinctively scowled and pulled Hannah into his arms. "I'm here. As long as you want to, you're qualified to attend anyone's wedding." Kian chimed in even more eagerly. "And me forget about weddings. If you want stars, I'll even climb a ladder to heaven to pick a warm one for you. Don't pay attention to those irrelevant people." "Forget weddings. If you wanted stars, I'd climb a ladder to the sky and pluck a fresh one for you. Don't mind those irrelevant people." Kian chimed in even more eagerly. "And me forget weddings. If you wanted stars, I'd climb a ladder to the sky and pluck a fresh one for you. Don't mind those irrelevant people." With the two men on either side, Hannah was finally coaxed into a smile through her tears. Chapter 9. With that, Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn led Hannah Vance to the table next to Vivienne Windsor's. The two young masters vied to serve Hannah food, their eyes filled with adoration. Chloe Joyner was so angry watching this that she nearly mangled her steak, but Vivienne remained calm and composed, so Chloe could only endure it and said nothing. Before long, the two finished their dinner and left together. After bidding Chloe farewell again, Vivienne returned home. That night, Lucas and Kian still didn't come back. Vivienne didn't care. She was busy packing her final belongings. In the morning, she heard footsteps outside and knew Lucas and Kian had returned. It was about time they came back. Today was the day to move into the new house. Only they didn't know that their new house, their future, would not include her. The noise outside grew louder, presumably from moving luggage. Vivienne paid no heed. After checking all her suitcases, her mother, Eleanor Windsor, called. The call connected, and Eleanor's gentle voice came through. "Vivi, what time does your flight land? We'll pick you up from the airport." Vivienne opened an app to check her ticket and said softly, "I should arrive around 7 in the evening." Just then, the door was pushed open. She tilted her head slightly and saw Lucas and Kian standing at the entrance. Kian casually asked, "Who are you talking to on the phone?" "No one." Vivienne hung up and replied coldly. Her cool voice reached Lucas and Kian, leaving them both somewhat stunned. Ever since Hannah appeared, Vivienne seemed to have been very distant towards them. Lucas initially thought there was no need to explain, but Vivienne's recent unusual behavior kept replaying in his mind, and an inexplicable panic began to set in. He instinctively spoke, "Vivi, Hannah is different from you. She comes from a poor family and has had a hard life since childhood. That's why I can't help but assist her a bit more. There's nothing else to it." Kian also chimed in with an explanation. "Yeah, we just feel sorry for Hannah. Besides, weren't you the one who introduced Hannah to us? How can you be jealous of her?" Vivienne's expression was calm. "Why are you telling me this?" The two spoke in unison. "Because you care." The three of them had grown up together as childhood sweethearts. With so many years of unspoken understanding, they knew what she was going to say as soon as she opened her mouth, and what she wanted as soon as she reached out her hand. How could they not sense her feelings? But now they found her increasingly difficult to understand. Vivienne's eyes held a trace of coolness, as if she were looking at two insignificant people. "I don't care. Didn't you say you only see her as a friend? I'm your friend too. In that case, what is there for me to care about?" For a moment, both men were speechless. Lucas remained silent for a long time before finally saying, "Vivi, you know, what I want has never been just friendship." Kian couldn't control the emotion on his face. "How have I treated you all these years, Vivi? Do you really think we're just friends?" Vivienne naturally knew what they were talking about. They both liked her and wanted to be with her. But if this was their way of liking her by helping Hannah bully her, then she couldn't bear it. She nodded. "Yes, we will have another kind of status." Soon, she and them wouldn't even be friends. Another status, just strangers. Her words were pointed. Lucas's heart thumped violently, an inexplicable unease washing over him. Just as he was about to speak, the driver walked in to help take Vivienne's luggage. Vivienne stopped the driver. "You guys go ahead. I'll take my things over myself." Hearing this, Kian grew agitated. "There's so much stuff, how will you manage? Stop being difficult." "It's my fault, I'll apologize to you, okay?" Vivienne insisted. "I really don't need help. You go help Hannah. She lives alone and she's a girl, so delicate, can't carry anything heavy." She needs your help more. Lucas detected the sarcasm in her words and frowned. Just then, Hannah happened to call. Lucas, Kian, can you come help me? It's all my fault. I'm so clumsy, I can't do anything right. Her pitiful and fragile voice came through the phone, clearly audible to everyone. The two men exchanged a glance, then looked at Vivienne's resolute expression, clearly not wanting help. In the end, they decided to leave first. Lucas hung up and looked at Vivienne. Hannah can't manage on her own. I'll go help her. Kian also grabbed his car keys. I'll go too. As he was about to leave, Lucas, still worried, turned back and added, Vivi, I know you're not in the mood to listen right now. I've booked a restaurant. After we finish moving, let's have dinner together. I'll explain everything about Hannah to you properly later. Before Vivienne could answer, he hurried out the door. Watching their retreating backs, Vivienne curled her lip. Explain later? Unfortunately, there was no later for them. Besides, after everything Lucas and Kian had done recently, Vivienne didn't know how they could possibly explain themselves. Just then, her phone vibrated a few times. Hannah had sent another provocative message. So sorry, Vivi didn't expect that just one word from me would make Lucas and Kian abandon you again. We'll all be living together soon, so please look after us. Vivienne smirked, her fingertips tapping lightly on the screen, typing out a reply. The three of you living happily ever after is more important than anything. I won't get in the way. The moment the message was successfully sent, she directly blocked all of Hannah's contact methods. Then Lucas. Finally, Kian. The list was cleared one by one. These three people would now completely disappear from her world. Finally, she picked up her suitcase, stepped out of the house that held countless memories, and left without looking back. Chapter 10, Vivienne Windsor boarded the plane without a backward glance, completely unconcerned about what would happen to Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn. As the plane took off, she felt a lightness she had never experienced before. However, back in the lakeside villa in Newbridge, the atmosphere was terrifyingly oppressive. 3 hours had passed. Lucas and Kian had arrived at the lakeside villa with Hannah Vance, but there was still no sign of Vivienne. Only their 3 sets of luggage were in the villa. Vivienne's was nowhere to be found. Lucas felt an overwhelming panic, as if something unforeseeable was happening. Kian sat on the sofa, his face unusually grim. Hannah knew what was going on but didn't plan to say anything. Seeing the two men remain silent, she broke the quiet. Vivi might not have finished packing. Why don't we have someone start decorating? Didn't we say we're having dinner together tonight? Vivi definitely wouldn't forget. Although Lucas nodded in agreement, a sense of unease still lingered in his heart. He remained motionless for a long time, but his heart urged him to go out. Kian looked at his phone, which, like Lucas's, showed a screen full of red missed calls. He couldn't calm down. He irritably grabbed a nearby jacket, threw it on, and strode out the door. He only uttered, Vivienne might be in trouble. I'm going back to check. Lucas also felt restless. He quickly arranged for the workers and looked at Hannah apologetically. Sorry, I'll go check too. You stay here and be good. I'll be back soon. Lucas, Kian, and Hannah called after them several times, but they didn't look back. The old house was empty. Nothing was left. 2 luxury cars scoured Newbridge, but there was no sign of Vivienne. The two men, as if by unspoken agreement, returned to their previous home. Lucas's heart leaped. He quickly called Assistant Matthews to check Vivienne's whereabouts. A short while later, Assistant Matthews called back. Mr. Sterling, Miss Windsor's flight to the capital was today. At this point, she should have already arrived. Hearing this, Lucas and Kian's minds went blank. They stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. How could this be? Impossible. Kian didn't want to believe it. How could Vivi suddenly go back to the capital? She promised she would stay in Newbridge with us forever. Assistant Matthews, did you make a mistake? Lucas clearly didn't believe it either. His voice deepened, serious. Assistant Matthews, check again. Confirm it. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Assistant Matthews confirmed it several times before speaking with a trembling voice. Mr. Sterling, Mr. Quinn, there's no mistake. He even sent the flight information to Lucas. The flight information was crystal clear, impossible to fake. Lucas almost thought he was hallucinating and quickly looked at Kian beside him. They exchanged a look, their eyes filled with mutual disbelief. Clack, the phone slowly slipped from his hand, fell to the ground, and made a crisp sound. Lucas and Kian's minds were in turmoil. They never imagined Vivienne would actually leave, but just a few hours ago, weren't they talking about moving to the new house? His mind replayed Vivienne's strange state when they left. Just then, Kian tapped his head. The last thing she said on the phone before they left became incredibly clear in his mind. Everything is ready, about to leave, should arrive in the evening. Chapter 11, Kian Quinn belatedly remembered everything. All of Vivienne Windsor's unusual behavior during this period flooded his mind at once. Lucas Sterling also fell silent. Perhaps Vivienne had been planning to leave for over a month. Could Hannah Vance's influence on Vivienne really be that significant? Just as he thought of Hannah, her call came through. Kian, Lucas, I'm already at the restaurant waiting for you. We agreed to have a celebratory dinner. Where are you? Kian held his phone but didn't reply for a long time. After a while, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Hannah, let's postpone the dinner. We'll talk about it later. Vivienne wasn't even here anymore. What was the point of a celebratory dinner? Lucas remained silent, staring at the shattered phone on the floor, his thoughts unreadable. Suddenly, the familiar Agent Miller walked over, leading a man in a gray coat. Sir, take a look at this house. Agent Miller racked his brains to describe the advantages of the house to the man in the gray coat. Seeing Lucas and Kian, Agent Miller was somewhat taken aback. Mr. Sterling, Mr. Quinn, what are you doing here? Hasn't the house already been sold? You! The agent was a little worried and craned his neck, trying to see if the luggage in the house had been moved out. The house doesn't need to be sold, I'll buy it. Lucas didn't hesitate. Hearing his words, Agent Miller almost thought he was hallucinating. He was stunned, his mouth agape, unsure what to say. After a long pause, he tentatively asked, Mr. Sterling, you're not joking, are you? Of course I'm not joking. Let's sign the contract. Lucas frowned slightly, his tone firm. Hearing the words sign the contract, Agent Miller's face instantly broke into a smile, and he nodded eagerly. Yes, sign the contract, right? Look, you can just sign here. Lucas briefly reviewed the contract, confirmed there were no issues, and decisively signed his name. Kian didn't try to compete. Buying the house and preventing it from falling into someone else's hands was enough. Anyway, their relationship was so good that if he wanted to move in, it would just be a matter of saying so. This house held too many of their memories. If Vivienne had moved with them to the lakeside villa, this place wouldn't have mattered. After all, as long as the person was there, that was enough. But now that she was gone, they didn't want to lose even the memories. Until late at night, the two sat on the floor of the old house. The house was empty, everything had been moved out. What couldn't be moved had been dragged away and thrown out. Everything belonging to Vivienne was gone. Lucas and Kian suddenly felt an immense loneliness. When Vivienne was around, they seemed to have endless things to say to her, always thinking of ways to make her happy. But now, only the two of them were left. Just looking at each other, they didn't even have the desire to talk. Chapter 12, Hannah Vance had called anxiously countless times, but Kian Quinn never answered. The lakeside villa was just as deserted. It didn't seem to make much difference where they were. As night deepened and the temperature dropped, the two finally couldn't bear to sit any longer and had to return to the lakeside villa. The moment the door opened, the sight that greeted them was Hannah, dozing off on the sofa. The villa was lit with warm yellow lights, looking dim yet cozy. However, neither Lucas Sterling nor Kian had the mood to notice these details. Why aren't you asleep yet? Kian's voice was laced with drowsiness and a hint of irritation. He really wasn't in the mood to take care of another patient. Lucas walked straight towards his room, leaving behind a cold sentence. Go to bed when it's time. Don't wait for us anymore. Hannah, nestled in the soft sofa, had a look of utter bewilderment on her face. How could this be? Lucas and Kian had been so gentle with her before. Could it be that just because Vivienne left, they had become so cold to her? Hannah paced back and forth between Lucas's and Kian's rooms. After a long while, her resolve hardened. Hannah returned to her own room and quickly deleted the provocative messages she had sent to Vivienne. Vivienne could have left willingly, but she couldn't have been forced out by her. Lucas lay in bed, sleep eluding him. His mind was a blank. Vivienne had left, but she had never told them where her family home in the capital was. The Windsor family was well known in the capital's elite circles. Finding them wouldn't be difficult, but she had hidden her intention to leave. Didn't that prove she didn't want them to find her at all? At this thought, a sharp pain shot through Lucas's heart. Kian couldn't sit still either. He quickly called Aunt Melody Windsor, wanting to ask why Vivienne had left, why she had departed without a word. The phone rang a few times before being answered. Aunt Melody was on night duty and had just come out of surgery. She hadn't even had time to take off her gloves and had an intern nurse hold the phone for her. "Hello, Kian, dear, what's up? Why are you calling Aunt Mel?" The three of them had grown up together, and Kian and Lucas also called her Aunt Mel, following Vivienne's lead. Kian asked anxiously, "Aunt Mel, do you know where Vivi's home is in the capital? Why did she suddenly leave?" "I need to find her." There was a moment of silence on the other end before she spoke uncertainly. You don't know why Vivi left. When she told me before, she said you and Lucas already knew." In an instant, both men realized Vivienne had lied. But Aunt Melody was Vivienne's relative. Realizing she had misspoken, she quickly tried to cover for her. "Oh, that, Kian, Aunt Mel must be muddled. Vivi just wanted to go back to the capital to see her parents. After all, it's been so many years, and you two are busy, so she didn't tell you." Aunt Melody tried to calmly patch up the loophole. This explanation didn't convince Kian. Is that so? Even if Kian didn't believe it, he knew he probably wouldn't get an accurate answer from Aunt Melody. He just hadn't expected Vivienne to hide it only from the two of them. The excuse of visiting parents was so flimsy. If that was all, why would she hide it? Something more important must be happening. Kian couldn't wait any longer. He quickly threw on a jacket and headed out. However, the moment he stepped out of the villa, Lucas was already leaning against his car, a pile of cigarette ash on the ground beside him. Chapter 13. Seeing Kian Quinn approach, Lucas Sterling quickly extinguished his cigarette. "You're here? I bought you a ticket for the earliest flight to the capital. We'll go find her. More people means more hope." Kian didn't have time to think and quickly nodded in agreement. The two got into the car. Kian, disregarding speed limits, drove the sports car as if it were a race car. Speeding all the way, Lucas and Kian arrived at the airport. They hadn't brought any luggage, their minds consumed by a single thought. Rush to the capital and find Vivienne Windsor. They were afraid that if they were even a little slower, something unacceptable would happen. As the plane was about to take off, the sky was just beginning to lighten. Lucas and Kian's hearts were too agitated to find peace. Meanwhile, in the capital, Vivienne had also had a restless night. She woke up early to do her makeup and change her clothes. Today was the day she and Caspian Garrison were getting their marriage license. However, until now, the number of times she and Caspian had met could be counted on one hand. Even Vivienne hadn't expected her betrothed to be Caspian Garrison. His name often came up in conversations among the Windsor family elders. He was a standout among the children of Vivienne's generation. When Arthur and Alina Windsor occasionally mentioned his name during phone calls with her, their voices were full of praise. Vivienne's memory of him was only of a little boy who seemed cold, but loved to pinch her cheeks. Still, even if her marriage partner today were someone else, she couldn't help but feel nervous. After all, it was a first in her life. Vivienne faced the mirror, repeatedly checking her makeup and clothes for any flaws. The clock struck 9. She quickly stood up, linked her arm with Caspian's, and they headed to City Hall. As if sensing Vivienne's nervousness, Caspian somehow produced a few candies and pressed them into her palm. "If you're nervous, eating some candy will help a lot." His gentle gaze rested on her, his expression firm. Vivienne was lost in such tenderness, almost dazed. Her mind felt dizzy. Her hands subconsciously unwrapped a candy and mechanically popped it into her mouth. The candy melted instantly, and its sweet taste seemed to seep into her heart. This arranged marriage seemed to be unexpectedly good. Vivienne thought to herself. Everything that followed felt like she was floating, her feet treading on soft clouds, a little unsteady. Vivienne allowed Caspian to lead her into City Hall. He guided her through the procedures of fingerprinting and taking photos. Looking at the stiff Vivienne beside him, Caspian couldn't help but let the corners of his lips curve up slightly. The seal was stamped, and 2 bright red marriage certificates were freshly issued. Vivienne almost thought she was dreaming. However, the next moment, 2 different voices called her name in unison. "Vivienne Windsor." Vivienne Windsor, Lucas and Kian stopped in front of Vivienne, both chests heaving, gasping for breath. The bright red marriage certificates deeply stung their eyes. Lucas and Kian's field of vision narrowed, eventually focusing only on that patch of red. Lucas's voice was hoarse, his face filled with disbelief. "Vivi, you got married?" They didn't want to believe it, but Vivienne's arm linked with Caspian's, and the matching rings on their ring fingers said it all. Chapter 14, Kian Quinn froze on the spot, his expression shifting several times. Finally, the smile he managed to force onto his face was uglier than a grimace. His lips moved several times before he could form words. "Vivi, where did you find this actor? He's not very good. Stop trying to fool us." Even with the rings and marriage certificates right before his eyes, he still didn't believe it. Vivienne Windsor hadn't expected to see them so soon. However, she had long since decided not to have any further involvement with them. "He's not an actor I hired. Sorry to disappoint you, but as you can see, I'm married." She spoke lightly, even unfolding the marriage certificate in her hand and waving it in front of Lucas, Sterling, and Kian. Caspian Garrison also calmly put his arm around Vivienne's waist and nodded politely at them. "Hello, allow me to introduce myself. I am Vivi's husband, Caspian Garrison." His eyes were a light, beautiful amber color. His casual glance at Lucas and Kian naturally carried an air of dismissive superiority. Lucas's pupils contracted, an unknown anger flaring within him. He barely managed to control his emotions, his voice suppressed as he stared intently at Vivienne. "Vivi, stop fooling around. Are you jealous? Be good, you don't mean this. Go get a divorce. You must not have thought it through. This was just an impulsive act." As he spoke, Lucas even tried to grab Vivienne's hand, intending to pull her back into City Hall. Kian deliberately tried to block Caspian for Lucas. "Mr. Garrison, what right do you have to marry Vivi? Do you understand her? Do you know all her likes and dislikes? Do you know all her little habits? Do you love her?" He yelled impulsively, even placing his hand on Caspian's shoulder. Caspian, however, paid no mind to his words and easily dodged Kian's restraint. "Mr. Quinn, Vivi and I can still cultivate our feelings. A marriage before love isn't a bad idea, but you and Mr. Sterling haven't even sorted out your own affairs. As far as I know, you seem to be entangled with Hannah Vance. With that, what right do you have to compete with me?" As he spoke, he even dusted off his shoulder with a look of distaste, as if disgusted that Kian had touched him. Hearing Hannah's name, Lucas and Kian both hesitated. We just feel sorry for Hannah, that's all. We have no other feelings for her," Kian said quickly. Vivienne pulled her hand away from Lucas and stood beside Caspian, saying coldly, "Enough, Lucas, Kian, you don't need to explain these things to me. From the moment I left Newbridge, we've had no relationship." Her expression remained distant, as if she were looking at two strangers. "Whether you two like Hannah or not has nothing to do with me. Don't come looking for me again. The capital is not your territory." As soon as she finished speaking, Caspian snapped his fingers, and a row of uniformly dressed bodyguards appeared. "Take them away, send them back to Newbridge, and make sure they don't have a chance to come to the capital." His meaning also represented Vivienne's. She didn't even try to refute him, even silently agreeing. Kian was utterly incredulous. He struggled fiercely, his eyes wide and bloodshot with agitation. "Vivi, you can't go with him. Let's go back to Newbridge. We'll treat you well. Let's go back to how things were, okay?" Chapter 15, Vivienne Windsor refused without hesitation. "No, it's not okay. I have my parents and family in the capital. As for Newbridge, I've grown tired of it." Lucas Sterling suddenly smiled, then his face quickly turned cold again. "Vivi, I'll make you regret this and come back to us. No need, I won't give you that chance." Caspian Garrison flicked his fingers, and the group of bodyguards gagged Lucas and Kian, tied their hands and feet, and threw them into a helicopter. Having his new wife witness such a ruthless side of him made Caspian a little nervous. "Vivi, would you be scared of me like this?" He wouldn't have been able to secure his position in the Garrison family through gentle means, of course. However, he didn't want to show this side of himself to Vivienne. Vivienne looked at Caspian's face. In that instant, she suddenly felt that the gap between them had shrunk considerably. She smiled and shook her head. "How could I? This was handled very well." Fewer troubles were, of course, for the best. Vivienne hadn't expected Lucas and Kian to follow her. In her mind, without her as an obstacle, Lucas and Kian should have felt unrestricted and been able to openly pursue Hannah Vance. The three of them were already living together. Wasn't it only a matter of time before they got together? Besides, Hannah herself had that intention. Vivienne thought they were simply not used to her not being around. One would feel reluctant to part with even a photograph kept for a few years. It was normal to feel unaccustomed when someone you've known for over 20 years suddenly leaves. But with enough time, habits can be broken. Vivienne went home with Caspian. In the helicopter, the roaring sound made Lucas and Kian's minds a mess as well. What had they come here for? It seemed they hadn't achieved anything. They were just one step too late. Why had Vivienne gotten married? He remembered when they had subtly expressed their feelings for her, she had been so shy she didn't know what to do. How could Lucas and Kian not see her dilemma? Back then, Vivienne was caught in a difficult situation. She didn't want to hurt either of them. No matter which childhood friend she chose, it would cause immense pain to the other. It was precisely because of this that Vivienne had delayed making a choice. Sometimes, she even wished they could remain friends, that things could just continue as they were. Because her feelings for either of them hadn't quite reached the point of true love. Lucas and Kian knew this too. They had the same thought, they didn't want to ruin their bond, so the two of them made a decision to push Vivienne a little. Coincidentally, Hannah appeared at this time. Her disguises were rather clumsy. A little investigation would reveal that her family background wasn't as poor as she claimed. Hannah was born in a small mountain village. Her parents worked migrant jobs. Although there was some preference for sons, they at least supported Hannah through university. They even earned money to support her studies in painting and design. During university, she had transferred her household registration to the school. Then, the moment she graduated from university, Hannah borrowed a large sum of money from her family and completely cut off contact with them. After starting work, she latched onto Vivienne. Lucas and Kian merely wanted to use her as a shield, to make Vivienne see her own heart clearly, to make her a little jealous, and then choose one of them to be with. Chapter 16, Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn had made a pact. No matter whom Vivienne Windsor chose, the other would suppress all inappropriate thoughts, and from then on, be just an ordinary friend. However, neither of them had expected Vivienne to choose no one. Why did it turn out this way? Why did pushing her lead to this outcome? Lucas and Kian looked at each other, a hint of resentment brewing in their hearts. Why did they have to come up with such a terrible idea back then? If only they had been a little earlier, or a little later, perhaps the three of them could have maintained their previous friendship, which would have been better than now, where even meeting was exceptionally difficult. The helicopter landed on the rooftop of the lakeside villa. The two were unceremoniously dumped by the bodyguards, and not long after, the helicopter took off again. Hearing the rumbling on the roof, Hannah Vance hurried up to check. Seeing Lucas and Kian with their hands and feet bound, Hannah's eyes turned red. "Are you okay?" she asked with concern, hastily untying the ropes for them. Lucas rubbed his bruised wrists, his expression cold. He didn't even spare Hannah a second glance and walked straight downstairs. Kian also had pent up anger and frustration, with nowhere to vent. Hannah brought 2 glasses of warm water and placed them in front of the two men. "You went to the Capitol. Did you find Vivi? How is she?" She subconsciously fidgeted with her sleeve, feeling a little nervous. She tried to console herself. No, they came back like this, they must have had a rough time in the Capitol. Vivienne has a perfect family background, loving family and friends. She has everything. So don't try to take Lucas and Kian from me. Hannah gritted her teeth inwardly, but maintained a gentle and sweet smile on her face. Hearing her words, Lucas's eyes darkened, and he narrowed them suspiciously. "What did you say? We didn't tell you we went to the Capitol. How did you know? What exactly do you know?" Hearing this, Kian also put on a serious face, grabbed Hannah's hand firmly, and his every word carried immense pressure. "What have you done? Speak, don't make us investigate ourselves. Did you say or do something that forced Vivi away?" Hannah's heart leaped in fright. Just like before, large tears rolled down her face, and she sniffled, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't. It's Vivi's parents in the Capitol," she told me. "She's not in Newbridge. I just subconsciously thought she was in the Capitol. What? Is she not there?" But this time, it didn't elicit any sympathy from the two men. Lucas and Kian were not fools. They had been willing to believe before, simply because they were deceiving themselves. Only by deceiving themselves could they act well enough to make Vivienne jealous. So no matter what Hannah said, They stood by her side. But now it was different. Kian squeezed Hannah's hand hard, leaving several distinct finger marks. "Are you still not going to tell the truth?" he threatened, then turned to Lucas. "Lucas, it seems we need to teach her a lesson before she'll confess." Lucas's face was colder than ever. His fingertips tapped lightly on the table, his voice even colder. "Do you still want your current job? If you don't want to lose everything and go back to your little mountain village, then confess honestly." These words seemed to seal Hannah's fate. Chapter 17, Hannah Vance's tears stopped flowing. Her hands hung limply as she stared at Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn, her face full of disbelief. She didn't understand why their attitude towards her had changed so quickly. Before, whenever she cried, they were always more anxious than anyone. But now, all they showed was indifference. It was as if even if she cried her eyes out, they wouldn't be moved in the slightest. Hannah dared not speak of her provocations towards Vivienne Windsor, nor of the deliberate traps she had set. She kept her mouth tightly shut, almost desperately pleading with Kian. "Kian, I didn't do anything, please believe me, okay? Vivi helped me so much, I'm so grateful to her, how could I ever treat her badly? If she's the one you care about, then I can move out." As she spoke, Hannah squeezed her eyes hard to produce more tears. "Is Vivi unhappy because I moved in? She suddenly started disliking me before, I wonder if it's the same this time?" Hannah was still trying to sow discord. Kian had always been easy to talk to. She could only hope that he would soften towards her, as he had before, and let this matter slide. As long as they temporarily overlooked her actions, living under the same roof, she would find a way to make them care only for her. Hadn't Vivienne simply arrived in their lives 20 years earlier than her? If she had such a family background, she would never be like Vivienne now. However, this time, Kian abandoned his usual indulgence. He let out a cold sneer, a mocking smile blooming on his lips. "You really won't repent until you're at death's door, will you? Anyone who knows me knows my temper isn't as good as you imagine." With that, he slammed Hannah's head onto the table with a thud, his hands gripping her neck tightly. Lucas's voice, like a nightmare, drilled into Hannah's ears. "Hannah, your job is gone. I've informed your family. They'll be here in a few days to find you. You should first think about how to deal with them." With just a few light taps on his phone, he had easily decided someone's fate. "No, don't let them come, I'll tell you everything." The pain of suffocation was perhaps less terrifying than Lucas's threat. Hannah's heart pounded violently. She was almost scared out of her wits. Only after getting her answer did Kian slowly release his grip. "Speak, cough, cough." Hannah coughed violently a few times, gasping for breath. I can show you my phone." With that, she unlocked her phone and handed it over. "I didn't do anything. You've misunderstood." Hannah secretly rejoiced, glad she had deleted the provocative messages to Vivienne earlier. Lucas didn't even take the phone. With just one glance, he guessed she hadn't given up and was still feigning. Kian snatched the phone directly and sent it out to have all its data recovered. Hearing Kian make the call, Hannah felt as if the sky was falling. She quickly grabbed Kian's arm, desperately pleading, Don't send it for data recovery." However, this time, neither Lucas nor Kian gave her another chance. They had given her enough chances. Unfortunately, Hannah hadn't cherished them. Lucas immediately had someone investigate everything Hannah had done related to Vivienne in the past few months. Chapter 18, the next day, the investigation results came out. After joining the company where Vivienne Windsor worked, Hannah Vance had immediately set her sights on Vivienne. Vivienne dressed with great elegance, and her speech was very refined. Hannah could tell at a glance that she was from a wealthy family. Hannah merely played pitiful in front of Vivienne, shed some aggrieved tears, and even hired people to impersonate her parents and make a few calls. The kind-hearted Vivienne then started taking care of her. It wasn't until Hannah, tagging along with Vivienne, met Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn that she realized just how privileged Vivienne's family background truly was. People like Lucas, Hannah had only seen in financial magazines. And Kian was a famous racing driver in Newbridge. His posters had once been all the rage throughout the city. Hannah was almost driven mad with jealousy. The kind of men she could spend her whole life striving for but never reach were all revolving around Vivienne. An extreme sense of imbalance instantly consumed her. Hannah tried every means to complain to Vivienne, clinging to her, and using her to build a good relationship with Lucas and Kian. Hannah just hadn't expected Lucas and Kian to fall for her so easily, to treat her so well, and even be willing to abandon Vivienne time and again for her sake. To prove Lucas and Kian's love for her, Hannah deliberately jammed her own hand, intentionally told them in front of Vivienne how badly she was doing, deliberately smashed Vivienne's trophy, and even intentionally placed flowers in their home. Hannah had been Vivienne's intern for some time. How could she not know about Vivienne's asthma and pollen allergy? She did it on purpose. The malice in Hannah's heart was almost overflowing. She only regretted that Vivienne hadn't died that day. The data on the phone had also been recovered, including the provocative message Hannah sent on the day Vivienne left. "Sorry, this time I made Lucas and Kian abandon you again. We'll be living together as four from now on, so please take care of us." This sentence was extremely glaring. Kian was so angry he slapped the phone across Hannah's face. He gritted his teeth. "How dare you speak to her like that? If it weren't for her, do you think you, of all people, would even be worthy of our attention?" Lucas leaned back on the sofa, his eyes slightly closed, his thin lips moving. "Throw all of Hannah's things out. And by the way, bring Hannah's family here to find her." He issued the order without hesitation. Assistant Matthews quickly replied, "Yes," and immediately directed the workers to move Hannah's belongings. Hannah collapsed to the ground in despair, her eyes completely lifeless. "No, don't take my things," seeing the workers moving in and out, her belongings being ruthlessly thrown out. Hannah desperately lunged forward to stop them. She had only lived in such a luxurious house for a few days. Her good life hadn't lasted long enough. Why were they doing this to her? Hannah threw herself on the ground, genuine tears streaming down her face. "It's over, everything is over." Hannah suddenly couldn't see a future. She had fought desperately to climb out of her small mountain village and enter a renowned design firm in Newbridge, only to now fall completely into the dust. Everything that had happened in these 2 months felt like a beautiful dream. When the dream ended, she returned to reality. She was still the ugly duckling, fundamentally unable to become a swan. Chapter 19 yet, even so, Hannah Vance wanted to try one last time. Holding her phone, she dialed Laura Sterling's number, crying out for help. "Mrs. S., Lucas is bullying me." She spoke hesitantly, leaving plenty of room for interpretation. Hearing Hannah's slightly hoarse and aggrieved voice, Laura Sterling instantly fumed. "Hannah dear, you wait, I'll be right over. That boy, bullying you and not even planning to give you a proper status. I don't have such an ill-mannered son." Laura Sterling quickly hung up and rushed over as fast as she could. Lucas Sterling stared daggers at Hannah, his face unusually grim. "What do you think you are? How dare you slander me?" He could no longer maintain his composure. His fingers gripped Hannah's jaw so forcefully that her skin turned bruised purple. But Hannah still clung to her phone as if it were an imperial edict, refusing to let go. Kian Quinn patted Lucas's shoulder comfortingly and said slowly, "It's okay, don't mind her. She's just a little twerp. Mrs. S. isn't so muddled as to not believe her own son." Hearing this, Lucas calmed down slightly and slowly released his hand. Laura Sterling had just stepped through the door, her rebukes not yet out of her mouth, when Lucas handed her the investigation report. After Laura Sterling finished reading it carefully, her face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. She strode up to Hannah and, disregarding her high society image, grabbed Hannah's hair and slapped her hard across the face. Almost instantly, Hannah's cheek swelled up high. "Mrs. S., why are you treating me like this? Lucas, he's saying this because he doesn't want to admit what he did to me." "Enough," Laura Sterling interrupted Hannah's ambiguous words. She sneered, her expression as indifferent as Lucas's. "Hannah, I know my son best. Besides, I've been around. Do you think I can't tell if something happened between you two? For what you've done, Vivienne chose to let you go, but the Sterling and Quinn families will definitely not let you off the hook. After all, Vivienne Windsor had been doted on by the Aunt Melody's family, the Sterling family, and the Quinn family as she grew up. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, when Lucas and Kian suddenly brought Hannah back, the Sterlings and Quinns already felt they couldn't face Aunt Melody's family. They also felt ashamed and embarrassed. It wasn't because their sons had found a girl from a poor family that they felt ashamed. It was because both the Sterling and Quinn families had previously said they wanted Vivienne as their daughter-in-law. Both Mr. and Mrs. Sterling and Mr. and Mrs. Quinn had already viewed Vivienne as their daughter-in-law, only hoping in their hearts that their own sons would step up. But that day, Hannah's sudden appearance caught them completely off guard. Even though they, as elders, felt Hannah wasn't a good person, too scheming, and not our kind of people, their sons liked her, and there was nothing they could do. At that time, both sets of parents treated Hannah with a sense of compensation and guilt. That's why they showed her the family heirlooms, thinking that if she really ended up with their son, they would give the heirlooms to her. Now that the truth was out, Laura Sterling had no intention of being nice to Hannah. She quickly called Catherine Quinn. Soon, Catherine Quinn arrived. After hearing everything, she was also furious. Catherine Quinn had a fiery temper and was not one to hold back. After hearing about Lucas and Kian's methods of revenge, she only felt they were too lenient. Chapter 20, Catherine Quinn directly grabbed Hannah Vance's clothes and shoved her head into the fountain. The water flow wasn't fast, but it was extremely uncomfortable as it rushed into her respiratory tract. Hannah choked on several mouthfuls of water, and when she coughed, even more water rushed into her windpipe. After a while, Catherine Quinn lifted her up by the collar. "How does it feel? Did you experience the kind of despair Vivi felt when she was on the verge of suffocation? Clearly able to live with just a little effort, yet still powerless." Catherine Quinn disgustedly threw her onto the ground and even dusted off her own, not-so-dirty hands. Kian Lucas, who chases a girl by being nice to another woman to make the first one jealous and see her own heart. So foolish, no wonder Vivi chose that Caspian garrison from the capital and not you too. This time, Catherine Quinn truly had no intention of defending her son. Laura Sterling agreed with Catherine Quinn's thoughts and nodded elegantly. "You were indeed wrong in this matter. With Vivi, what's done is done. She's already married. You two shouldn't bother her anymore." Lucas Sterling's eyes were downcast, emotions flickering within them, but he never gave an answer. Kian Quinn bit his lip hard, stubbornly refusing to bow his head. Neither of them was someone who would give up easily. If they were, they wouldn't have achieved what they had in their careers. The rivalries in business, the struggles on the racetrack all proved the stubbornness in their bones. Laura Sterling and Catherine Quinn exchanged a look and sighed repeatedly. They knew their children's personalities and were helpless against them. They could only let them be. After Laura Sterling and Catherine Quinn left, Lucas Sterling directly had the pile of mud on the floor thrown out. Hannah was thus unceremoniously dumped on the street, along with all her luggage and belongings. A patrolling city management officer quickly waved his hand at her. "Miss, you can't sleep on the streets here. Please move along." The words, "sleep on the streets," from the officer deeply struck Hannah. She had never imagined she would one day fall to such a state. Her luggage was piled haphazardly beside her. An unknowing passerby might mistake it for a pile of trash. Hannah's delicate face flushed red, then turned pale, then red again. She kicked her luggage in anger, but it only made a clattering sound, making it seem even more like junk. Thinking of this, Hannah's expression turned extremely ugly. Just then, her phone rang urgently. For a fleeting moment, she almost thought it was Lucas or Kian, regretting their actions and calling to get her back. She subconsciously answered, however, it wasn't the call she imagined. A heavily accented Mandarin, interspersed with a few dialect phrases, came through. "You useless brat finally got a hold of you who gave you the guts to take so much money from the family. I hear you've made a lot of money. It's time you paid us back." The man's tone on the other end was vicious. It was Victor Vance. If not for the phone separating them, Victor Vance might have already chased Hannah down and beaten her up. Hannah frantically hung up the phone, not daring to make a sound. How could it be so fast? She anxiously wanted to grab her things and leave, but just as she gripped the handle of a suitcase, she suddenly remembered. She had already terminated the lease on her apartment in Newbridge, and she couldn't go back to the lakeside villa. She had nowhere to go now. Thinking of this, Hannah collapsed to the ground in despair. The city management officer, his face dark, came to shoo her away again. "Miss, sitting here like this is very detrimental to the city's appearance. Please leave as soon as possible." Chapter 21, the city management officer's relentless voice pierced Hannah Vance's heart. She stamped her foot and replied angrily, "Fine, I'll go." All right. Hannah had just made a call, summoning a moving truck to take away her luggage. She had nowhere to go, and the driver was getting impatient, asking her repeatedly where she was headed. After a long while, she managed to name her previous residential complex. Go to Orchid Gardens. She could only contact her previous landlord to discuss renewing the lease. Fortunately, only a few days had passed, and the apartment hadn't been rented out yet. As Hannah returned to Orchid Gardens, the first thing she saw was her entire family, young and old, waiting at the complex entrance. Although the Vance family dressed rustically, they were relatively clean and tidy. However, Hannah was full of disdain for them and naturally treated them poorly. She wanted to tell the driver to turn around and leave, but once they reached the destination, the driver got out to help unload the luggage. Hannah pay up. Before Hannah could even get out of the car, Victor Vance and Valerie Vance surrounded the car door. Grandpa Vance and Grandma Vance, along with a few children and Hannah's younger brother Danny Vance, rushed forward to snatch Hannah's luggage. Worthless items were casually tossed on the ground, while valuable bags and clothes were quickly stuffed into woven plastic sacks behind them. Let go, those are my things, you're not allowed to take them. No matter how Hannah tried to stop them, she couldn't fend off several pairs of hands. All of Hannah's luggage was torn open, miscellaneous items scattered all over the ground. The crowd of onlookers grew larger, pointing and whispering. Yet the Vance family felt no shame, even shouting loudly, "Our daughter stole all the family's savings. What's wrong with us taking a few things?" As if that wasn't enough, when Hannah tried to persuade them to go upstairs to the apartment, the Vance family shamelessly lay down and brazenly ordered Hannah around. Cooking for the whole family wasn't enough. All the household chores, everyone's laundry, and so on, were all dumped on Hannah. If she didn't do it, the Vance family would go around the complex, loudly proclaiming Hannah's scandalous deeds. Hannah didn't want to lose face and could only endure it. This still wasn't enough to appease the Vance family's anger. They also urged Hannah to go out and find a job to earn money. Hannah spent her days looking for work and her evenings doing chores, all while being berated. Her condition deteriorated daily. In just a few days, she seemed to have aged a dozen years. Her complexion was sallow, and her body swayed with every step. This state nearly drove her mad. With nowhere else to turn, Hannah went to Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn to seek forgiveness. She knelt shamelessly outside the lakeside villa, shouting hoarsely, "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Quinn, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have harmed Vivienne Windsor. I truly know I was wrong." She cried out again and again, begging for forgiveness. However, the villa was empty. Lucas and Kian had moved back to their previous house. The lakeside villa was vacant again. However, even though the two had left, the security guard still informed them of the situation. "Don't bother with her, just let her kneel. She'll eventually leave." Lucas's cold voice was calm, without a trace of emotion. The security guard hung up the phone and continued to patrol the area, preventing Hannah from sneaking in. After all, her clothes didn't look like she could afford to be there. Chapter 22, Hannah Vance knelt stubbornly outside the villa for a day and a night, finally collapsing from exhaustion. When she woke up, neither Lucas Sterling nor Kian Quinn were by her side. She was still in her rented apartment. From outside her room, she heard Victor Vance and Valerie Vance discussing. "Let's go home today. We can't stay here any longer. Hannah won't listen to us obediently. She has legs, she'll definitely run away again. Let's go back together while she's still unconscious," Valerie said anxiously. Victor Vance nodded in agreement, saying, "All right." Then the door opened, and Hannah, with all her might, struggled to run out. She didn't even have time to put on her shoes, but she didn't forget to grab her phone. Hannah didn't know who to beg anymore. Lucas and Kian were so cold. In her panic and helplessness, Hannah suddenly thought of Vivienne Windsor. Yes, she's so kind, so soft-hearted, she'll definitely forgive me. So Hannah boarded a high-speed train to the capital to find Vivienne. Lucas and Kian both learned of this news and quickly arranged for people in the capital to intercept Hannah, preventing her from having any chance to see Vivienne. They hadn't even had a chance to see Vivi yet. How could they let Hannah get there first? Lucas and Kian's men discovered several groups of people sent by Caspian garrison to watch them. This was Newbridge, their turf, so naturally they called the shots. Kian, as if in provocation, led his men to break the limbs of the people Caspian had sent, then sent them back to the garrison family as a show of force. Lucas naturally didn't let it slide either and planted some of his own people in the capital. This way, when they went to the capital again, they wouldn't be as helpless as last time. Today was the 5th time Lucas and Kian had come to Aunt Melody Windsor's house to apologize. "Aunt Mel, we really know we were wrong. We've thought it through. We've let go of our feelings for Vivi. We just want to attend Vivi's wedding as older brothers, that's all." Lucas said these insincere words. Kian nodded repeatedly, trying to make his expression look innocent. "Aunt Mel, please grant us this small wish. After all, we've known Vivi for so many years. We don't want to miss even her wedding. It's fine if we can't be together. We were prepared for that. After all, even if it wasn't Caspian, even if she chose between me and Lucas, one of us would always be disappointed. We just don't want to miss the chance to attend Vivi's wedding. Aunt Mel, could you please help us out?" Aunt Melody looked at them, feeling very troubled. She was roughly aware of what they had done before. She couldn't make decisions for Vivi. However, she had watched Lucas and Kian grow up, and her heart couldn't help but soften. They had come to beg her several times. Even a heart of stone couldn't remain unmoved indefinitely. Aunt Melody sighed deeply. "Oh, you two, I can only help you ask Vivi. I can't guarantee she'll agree." Receiving a satisfactory answer, Lucas and Kian both thanked her profusely. "Thank you, Aunt Mel. Your words are enough. We're sorry to trouble you." After seeing them off, Aunt Melody mulled it over for a long time before sending Vivienne a message. "Vivi, Lucas and Kian said they want to attend your wedding. What do you think? Should we let them come?" Chapter 23, Vivienne Windsor was trying on wedding dresses when her phone suddenly chimed a few times. She was busy adjusting the train of her dress and didn't have time to look. So, she lowered her head and quickly said, "Caspian, can you check the message for me?" Beside her, Caspian Garrison, dressed in a black suit, looked even taller and more slender. "All right." He leaned casually against the wall, picked up Vivienne's phone from nearby, and entered her initials and birthday to unlock it. Upon seeing Aunt Melody Windsor's message, Caspian paused for a moment, then read it aloud. "Vivi, Lucas and Kian said they want to attend your wedding. What do you think? Should we let them come?" His eyes deepened slightly, a hint of jealousy in his tone. "Vivi, what do you say? Should we let them attend my wedding?" Caspian took a few steps forward, stood behind Vivienne, dismissed the assisting attendant, and personally helped her adjust the dress train. The tall, broad figure behind her almost enveloped her completely. His long, well-defined fingers moved over her dress train, creating an inexplicably intimate sensation. "Caspian, maybe." Vivienne stared at his serious face, her own face reddening silently, and stammered. Caspian chuckled lightly. One hand held her waist, pressing her into his embrace, while the other gently stroked her hair. "Vivi, trust me. Trust your husband's abilities. Even if they come to our wedding, they won't be able to cause any trouble." His chin rested on her shoulder, his deep, magnetic voice falling entirely into Vivienne's ear. She stared blankly at her reflection in the mirror, not noticing when her entire face had flushed crimson. Vivienne hadn't heard a word Caspian said, merely nodding distractedly. Okay." She felt like she was turning as red as a cooked shrimp, her heart pounding uncontrollably. However, the man behind her seemed to notice her embarrassment, and the smile on his handsome face grew even more pronounced. "Vivi, look, you're beautiful in the mirror." He teased her deliberately. Vivienne's small face was flushed red. Even she hadn't noticed that this reaction was entirely different from how she would react to Lucas Sterling or Kian Quinn. Her eyes darted around, looking everywhere, but daring not to look at the man behind her. She didn't even notice when the phone was back in her hand. It was almost as if Caspian had guided her fingers, manipulating them to type out the word, "okay." Vivienne felt as if her hands were stained with the warmth of his palm. Finally, when she fully came to her senses, she belatedly realized Caspian had been jealous earlier. An incredible thought sprang into Vivienne's mind. Caspian liked her? Vivienne covered her flushed cheeks, unable to believe it. She told herself they had only been together for a few short days. How could feelings develop so easily? They were husband and wife now. Even jealousy was normal. To clear her head, after Vivienne finished trying on the wedding dress and confirmed what needed alterations, she threw herself wholeheartedly into her work. Caspian watched the serious girl, said nothing, and silently adjusted the lighting. Only after confirming it was the most suitable light did he quietly leave. Chapter 24, Caspian Garrison deliberately instructed his men to ease up on their surveillance of Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn. It wasn't that he had let his guard down, but rather he was intentionally allowing Lucas and Kian an opportunity to make a move, so he could anticipate and prepare accordingly. His subordinates received the order and quickly went to carry it out. At this time, Caspian also deliberately informed Arthur and Eleanor Windsor that Lucas and Kian were coming to the capital. What? After how they treated Vivi, they still dare to come to the wedding. Eleanor was furious upon hearing this news. If it were before, she would have sung Lucas and Kian's praises. She had even genuinely considered them as potential sons-in-law. But they should never, ever have played with Vivi's life. How much must Vivi have suffered when that Hannah Vance was harming her? Moreover, at that time, the childhood friends who had always stood by her side chose to give her the cold shoulder over flowers sent by another woman, even if they were intentionally using this method to make Vivi realize whom she truly loved. Eleanor would absolutely not allow it. At this moment, Eleanor only felt fortunate that old Mr. Windsor had chosen such a good marriage for Vivi. Compared to Lucas and Kian, Caspian was countless times better. At least Caspian's life was uncomplicated, he was devoted to Vivi, and he was in the capital. Eleanor had watched him grow up and knew him well. Eleanor and Arthur Windsor quickly expressed their displeasure with Lucas and Kian to those around them. The Windsor family was a prominent family in the capital, not to mention they had allied with the Garrison family through marriage, and both families were thriving. Other families, eager to curry favor with the Windsors, quickly declared their stance. Arthur and Eleanor Windsor further forbade the villa's security from letting those two in. Lucas and Kian had just arrived in the capital when they were met with the cold shoulder from the city's elite circles. Vivienne Windsor's phone was unreachable. Even if they used a different number, the call would only be blocked after connecting. Lucas managed to get Arthur and Eleanor's contact information from Aunt Melody Windsor. He and Kian each contacted one parent, attempting to find a reasonable explanation for everything that had happened. Mr. Windsor, this is Lucas Sterling. I want to apologize to you and to Vivi. The latter half of the sentence was cut off before he could say it. However, Kian faced the same situation. His phone also emitted a consistent beeping sound. Calling from other numbers yielded the same treatment. Lucas and Kian had no choice but to go to the Windsor villa, trying to find an opportunity to see Vivienne. However, they waited outside the Windsor villa for nearly a day without seeing Vivienne. Until dusk, when a black Rolls-Royce slowly drove in. From the side window, Lucas saw Vivienne's figure. At that moment, Kian quickly started his car, executed a drift, and blocked Caspian's car. Vivi, come out, let's talk. Lucas got out of the car and knocked on the Rolls-Royce's window. Seeing the two people she didn't want to see again, Vivienne frowned instinctively. She subconsciously looked at Caspian, a little worried he might get jealous. So Vivienne comfortingly squeezed Caspian's hand. Caspian's lips curved up slightly. He squeezed Vivienne's hand back, his voice gentle. Shall we get out of the car? Caspian opened his side of the car door and, in front of Lucas and Kian, carried Vivienne out bridal style. The moment her feet touched solid ground, Vivienne's face was still a little flushed. Chapter 25, Vivienne Windsor and Caspian Garrison, fingers intertwined, looked at Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn with a hint of defensiveness. Faced with such a gaze, Kian felt deeply hurt. Vivi, we're childhood sweethearts. How can you look at me like that? Vivienne frowned, not wanting to discuss these trivialities with them. Besides, weren't they the ones who initially chose to abandon their years of affection? She looked at the two men faintly, her voice calm. You don't need to tell me these things. I need to go home. If you have anything to say it quickly. Hearing this, Kian wanted to say more but was interrupted by Lucas. Lucas stood before Vivienne, his cool eyes filled with determination. Vivi, we were wrong before. We don't like Hannah Vance at all. We just wanted to use her to make you jealous, to help you realize who you like more in your heart. We just didn't expect. He described Hannah's fate and the reasons for their past behavior towards Vivienne. Hearing that Hannah had come to the capital seeking her help, Vivienne felt a surge of resistance. She didn't understand how Hannah could, after harming her so much, still come to her for help. Hannah had been sent back to Victor Vance by Lucas's men. The Vance family had given up their Newbridge house and taken Hannah back to their hometown. She had received her punishment for everything she did. Vivienne could imagine the hardships Hannah would face back home. Hannah used to always complain to her about being poor, and Vivienne had helped in every way she could. But upon learning Hannah's past, Vivienne simply couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for her. However, Vivienne couldn't accept Lucas and Kian's excuse for their actions. She let out a cold, indifferent laugh and replied, "Lucas, Kian, stop deceiving yourselves. There are many ways to make me see my true feelings. Why did you have to choose the one that would hurt me the most? Do you dare say that from the moment you met Hannah, you didn't have any other feelings for her at all?" Lucas froze, a look of bewilderment and confusion on his face. Kian's face showed a hint of unnaturalness, a touch of guilt in his heart. "No, of course not," he stammered. Caspian, however, decisively tore away their flimsy veil of denial. "All right, stop deceiving yourselves. If it weren't for your repeated neglect of Vivi, Hannah would never have had the chance to hurt Vivi. I'm afraid that in the end, you couldn't even tell if you had developed feelings for Hannah, could you? These are just your childish lies. No man who truly loves a woman would use another woman to make her jealous." The more Caspian spoke, the paler Lucas and Kian's faces became. These words undoubtedly struck at their true inner thoughts. They couldn't refute them at all. Vivienne remained silent for a while before slowly speaking. "Lucas, Kian, I've only just realized it now. I may have never loved either of you. Perhaps there was some infatuation, but that wasn't love. It hadn't reached the level of love before you personally extinguished it." She said it with a sense of immense relief. "If you want to come to my wedding, then I agree. I just don't want you to ruin my wedding." "I am very happy now." Lucas's heart throbbed with a dense pain. He shook his head slightly, looked at Vivienne, and managed a faint smile. "Vivi, don't be with someone else. We're childhood sweethearts, I understand everything about you. We're a match made in heaven," he muttered stubbornly, still unwilling to accept this reality. Chapter 26. Kian Quinn's eyes were bloodshot, his fists clenched tightly. He threw a determined punch towards Caspian Garrison. "Why him? I don't accept it, Vivi. As long as you don't want to marry him, I'll help you elope. We can go abroad or back to Newbridge, wherever you like. It's all fine, however." Caspian, who could have easily dodged Kian's punch, merely tilted his head slightly, allowing Kian's fist to graze his cheek. The injury wasn't serious, but it still left a red mark. "Hiss!" Caspian clutched his lightly injured cheek, drew a sharp breath, his features contorted in pain. Even so, his handsome appearance remained undiminished. Vivienne Windsor saw he was hurt and felt extremely distressed. She grabbed his hand, wanting to lift it to check the wound. "It's okay, I'm not hurt, it doesn't hurt." Caspian forced a light-hearted smile. Vivienne saw it and became even more anxious. Seeing he wouldn't let go, Vivienne felt resentment towards Kian and questioned him coldly. "Kian, why did you hit him? When did you become so impulsive and irritable?" Such blame weighed heavily on Kian, almost driving him mad. He hadn't expected Vivienne to completely ignore what he had just said, her entire focus on Caspian. He knew perfectly well how much force he had used in his punch and whether it had landed. He never thought he could be framed like this. Kian was furious. "I didn't even hit him. He's not hurt, Vivi. Come with me, he's not a good person." As he spoke, he tried to grab Vivienne's hand. But Vivienne shook off Kian's hand without hesitation. "This is the Windsor residence, my home. I won't go with you. I can't believe you injured someone and still won't admit it." Her tone had never been so cold. "Lucas Sterling, Kian Quinn, we are not friends anymore. You are not welcome at the wedding either, since you're not coming with sincere intentions." As soon as she finished speaking, Vivienne took Caspian's hand and strode through the villa's outer gate. Several Windsor family security guards and bodyguards quickly blocked Lucas and Kian, giving them no chance to enter. Lucas and Kian stubbornly waited outside the gate. Until late at night, Eleanor and Arthur Windsor came over to send them away. "Young Mr. Sterling, young Mr. Quinn, please leave. The Windsor family does not welcome you. We also don't wish to entrust Vivi to people like you. After all, no one can guarantee there won't be another Hannah Vance. You are both very outstanding. Don't be so fixated on Vivi." Eleanor Windsor persuaded them earnestly, while Arthur Windsor stood by, his face stern, silently supporting her. Lucas's eyes were bloodshot. His usually cool face was now etched with exhaustion. Kian was no better. completely devoid of his usual spirited demeanor. Seeing their persistence, Arthur and Eleanor Windsor shook their heads repeatedly and finally had the bodyguards escort them away. They also wanted to prove they would be devoted, but with the precedent of Hannah, it was impossible for anyone to feel at ease with them. Lucas and Kian exchanged a look, both seeing the dejection in each other's eyes. Chapter 27, if they gave up just like that, what would their years of persistent love amount to? What would over 20 years of companionship mean? Could it be that so many years of affection couldn't compare to someone they had known for just over 20 days? A determined fire burned in the eyes of Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn. They said to each other in unison, "Let's cooperate." After that, it's every man for himself. Almost without needing to communicate, they had arranged what they needed to do. Kian asked Catherine Quinn and Laura Sterling for the few remaining photos in their families, documenting their past 20-plus years. Unfortunately, there weren't many group photos left. Most had been burned by Vivienne Windsor. What could be found at home were mostly individual photos of the two from their childhood. Even so, they were somewhat satisfied. It was better than nothing. Lucas, on the other hand, planted people within the Garrison family or bribed Garrison family members. The wedding was in 3 days. They still had much to prepare. Vivienne, on her side, was also a little nervous. Even though she didn't intend to have any further contact with Lucas and Kian, she couldn't stop them from repeatedly seeking her out. She unconsciously crumpled Caspian Garrison's sleeve, only realizing what she had done after a long while. "Caspian, do you know any way to resolve this once and for all? I don't want to be disturbed anymore." Having already decided to cut ties with them, Vivienne had no interest in getting entangled with them again, let alone being friends. They could no longer be friends. Having those childhood memories of knowing each other was already a beautiful recollection. It was fine for beautiful memories to end abruptly. A broken mirror didn't necessarily need to be pieced back together. Caspian understood Vivienne's thoughts. He comfortingly pulled Vivienne into his embrace and gently patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, I've prepared everything. After our wedding, they will never appear before us again." Vivienne tried her best to calm herself and trust Caspian. On the wedding day, a grand Western-style wedding was held on a large lawn. The entire estate was decorated in romantic pink for Vivienne and Caspian's wedding. Countless handmade woven flowers were stacked into various shapes. These handmade woven flowers were specifically used to accommodate Vivienne's asthma and pollen allergy. Even though they were handmade, the flowers looked incredibly realistic. Almost none of the guests attending the wedding doubted the authenticity of this ceremony, including Lucas and Kian. However, when all the guests had arrived, the bride and groom were still nowhere to be seen. Lucas and Kian almost thought Vivienne had come to her senses and was preparing to run away from the wedding. However, everything that followed completely exceeded their expectations. The Garrison family used newly researched technology to create holographic projections of Vivienne and Caspian, which went through the entire wedding ceremony in their stead. The wedding-crashing plans Lucas and Kian had prepared were completely useless. They kept looking around, trying to find Vivienne. However, their eyes ached from searching, but they couldn't find Vivienne. She hadn't appeared at the wedding venue at all. They had all been tricked, the master of ceremonies announced loudly. The couple may now exchange rings, and the groom may kiss the bride. The two holographic figures began to exchange rings as instructed. Just then, the provocative video Lucas and Kian had prepared was replaced. The large screen displayed blessings from everyone for Vivienne and Caspian's wedding. Chapter 28, after the blessings finished playing, a live broadcast of Vivienne Windsor and Caspian Garrison's actual wedding began. At this very moment, they were at a historic princely manor in the capital, holding a traditional Chinese wedding ceremony. The intricately carved and painted manor was adorned with red silk. The sound of Suona horns filled the air, and the joyous music infected everyone present. Under everyone's gaze, Caspian, dressed in ancient-style wedding attire, rode a tall horse, followed by a bridal sedan chair. Accompanied by the sound of gongs and drums, the procession following behind scattered countless pure gold coins and festive candies and pastries. Countless people orderly scrambled for the gold coins and treats, continuously offering words of blessing. Meanwhile, the guests at the estate also received pure gold ingots and various candies and pastries. The lavishness of this wedding was enough to astound everyone. Lucas Sterling and Kian Quinn watched with their own eyes as the figures on the screen stopped at the entrance of the manor. Caspian dismounted smoothly, carried Vivienne out of the bridal sedan chair bridal style, and walked into the manor with firm, steady steps. Lucas was so angry his lips were bitten until they bled deeply, his eyes wide and bloodshot. Thump Kian slammed his fist on the table, grabbed his jacket, and immediately stood up. Without even looking back at Lucas, he jumped into his sports car and sped towards the manor. He couldn't care about anything anymore. Any wedding crashing plan was no longer important now. He just wanted to see Vivienne. If he couldn't stop her from getting the marriage license, could he not stop her wedding ceremony? Kian sped recklessly, and for a moment, failed to notice a vehicle uncontrollably hurtling towards him from the side. With a loud bang, Kian's car was smashed inwards, his leg pinned and immobile. He could feel with terrifying clarity that his leg had no sensation. Warm blood trickled down from his forehead, along his cheek. For a fleeting moment, Kian almost thought he was going to die. He subconsciously tried to call Vivienne. However, he had forgotten that all his contact methods had been deleted and blocked by Vivienne. Unsurprisingly, the call didn't go through. Lucas, on the other side, chased after him but still couldn't stop Kian's madness. Even though he himself was so jealous he was about to lose his mind, he still tried his best to maintain his composure. It was just a wedding ceremony. People who get married can also get divorced. There were countless ways to get Vivienne away from Caspian. Their years of affection couldn't be erased. Just this alone could make Caspian suspicious, and doubtful Lucas repeated these reassurances to himself over and over. However, it was all in vain. On his way to the manor, he witnessed Kian's car accident. Faced with a choice, he ultimately gave up on crashing the wedding. He had no choice. Kian's life was also important. They were friends. He couldn't just stand by and watch him die. Lucas sent Kian to the hospital. By the time Catherine Quinn arrived at the hospital, Vivienne's wedding had already concluded successfully. In just one short day, Lucas had become haggard beyond recognition. Kian's life was saved, but his leg was still undergoing surgery. Whether it could be saved was still uncertain. The promise he had casually made to Hannah Vance before, that he would never race again, had been fulfilled in this way. Regardless of whether his leg recovered or not, racing was now impossible for him. Chapter 29, Lucas Sterling saw reports of Vivienne Windsor's grand wedding on various news outlets. He stared intently at Caspian Garrison's photo on his phone, a storm of anger brewing within him. It was Caspian who did this, wasn't it? It must be him. After this thought struck Lucas, he ignored the protests of Catherine Quinn and Laura Sterling and rushed out of the hospital. The Garrison residence. Today was considered the first day of their marriage. Caspian was uncharacteristically enjoying a tender moment with Vivienne in bed. The gentle sunlight and fresh air outside seemed to hold no attraction. Suddenly, a series of urgent doorbells shattered the peace. Caspian frowned slightly, wondering who would disturb them at such a time. He casually threw on a robe and went to open the door. The moment the door opened, Lucas's fist came flying through the air. Caspian sidestepped, nimbly dodging it, and then firmly gripped Lucas's fist. What madness is this? Lucas had dark circles under his eyes and a stubble on his chin. This was probably the first time he had looked so disheveled. His voice was so cold it could freeze ice. Caspian Garrison, snatching Vivi away wasn't enough for you. Why did you have to hire someone to hit Kian? He's lying in the hospital now. Whether his leg can be saved is still unknown. You will pay the price. With that, Lucas and Caspian began to fight. Caspian effortlessly countered Lucas's every move, not forgetting to explain, "Lucas Sterling, I wouldn't stoop to such actions. I merely arranged for people to send you both back, to target the Quinn and Sterling families, to give you something to do so you wouldn't have time to bother me and Vivi." At this moment, Vivienne was also drawn over by the noise. "Stop fighting," Vivienne quickly intervened, adding, "I believe Caspian. Let's use evidence to speak." Hearing her voice, Lucas finally calmed down. Before long, the Garrison family presented the investigation results. The driver who hit Kian had suffered brake failure. It was an accident. It had nothing to do with Caspian. As Caspian had said, The people he arranged would have knocked Lucas and Kian unconscious and sent them back to Newbridge if they had tried to crash the wedding. The targeting of the Quinn and Sterling families in Newbridge had already begun. Laura Sterling called Lucas several times, urging him to return to Newbridge. Even Kian had been sent back to Newbridge for treatment. Caspian, ever since planning to marry Vivienne, had already established a new company in Newbridge, preparing to compete with Sterling Corp. The Windsor family itself had considerable influence in Newbridge, and after joining forces with the Garrison family, they also decided to start reigning in the Sterling and Quinn families. When Kian woke up and found his leg tightly bound, he almost went mad. Lucas sat by his bed and said coldly, "Your leg is fine, it's saved. It just needs rehabilitation and proper rest. Forget about racing in the future." Hearing he couldn't race, Kian truly couldn't accept it this time. He could voluntarily give up racing, but he couldn't accept being forced to give it up like this. After his leg finally healed enough for him to walk normally, Kian sat in a car full of anticipation. Before he could even start the engine, he began to break out in a cold sweat. The feeling of near death washed over him again, the shadow looming over him never dissipated. Forget racing, he couldn't even drive a normal car anymore. Kian got out of the car, his heart like dead ashes, drenched in cold sweat as if he'd been pulled from water, his face ghastly pale. Lucas helped him up but said nothing. Kian looked at Lucas and spoke hoarsely, "Why are you still here with me? What are you willing to give up on Vivi?" Lucas stared blankly into the distance and let out a long sigh. "What else can I do if I don't give up?" During Kian's recuperation, it wasn't that he hadn't tried, but it all came to nothing. Even though he recounted all their past happy memories in letters to Vivienne over and over, hoping to make her recall their past, but he never received a single reply. Vivienne had long since explained everything to Caspian, including her childhood experiences with Lucas and Kian. They were completely open with each other. How could they be made jealous or suspicious? After all, Lucas had truly seen in Vivienne's eyes her love for Caspian. That kind of love was completely different from what she had shown them. Lucas had no choice but to give up. Even if he was unwilling, what could he do? Hearing Lucas's words, Kian also felt as if all hope had been drained from him. He was now a cripple. He couldn't even compare to Lucas, so how could he possibly compare to Caspian? The two silently returned to their respective homes. Lucas threw all his energy into work, too busy to think about anything else. Kian, on the other hand, tried again and again to overcome his psychological trauma. Unconsciously, the number of times they met grew less and less, and they gradually had nothing left to say to each other. The three people who were once so close had now quietly drifted apart. The end.